Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Angela and today we are going to be talking about IVF. If you're a long-time viewer, you're probably thinking like, maybe this video is better suited for your personal channel, that sort of thing. But to make a super long story short, I've got to condense things. I know you guys probably just want to like throw tomatoes at me through the screen, but I've had a lot of my hands in a lot of different baskets, and I've just gotten to a place where I really need to condense. So I have 3 different YouTube channels and other things in the works, so I need to like condense things. So for right now, YouTube content is all just going in one place. It's all going here on this channel, and then there's something else that will be coming out very soon that I might have already talked about on Instagram. I don't know yet because I don't know when this video is going up, but there should hopefully, when it's all said and done, be 2 main places to find me, here and somewhere else, which will soon be announced. But anyways, so we're going to talk about IVF today because that's fun. So you guys know we used donor embryos a few years ago to conceive our twins. Prior to doing that, we did a cycle of IVF with my eggs, my husband's sperm, that was a colossal failure. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to share a little bit about that. I'm going to share a little bit more about the donor embryo situation and some tips and tricks for IVF, for going through IVF or fertility treatments like that. I pretty regularly get DMs and questions about this, and I just don't really talk about it much, but I thought that we would talk about it today because YOLO. I don't know, because why not? So if you have an interest in fertility information and IVF information and tips and tricks, if you're planning on going through it, or maybe you know someone who is, stick around. We're gonna chat about it. It'll probably be TMI, but hopefully we're all big kids here. And of course I will give that caveat that I like to give on videos like this, that this is not content for children. If you are one of the wonderful, amazing, lovely mamas that likes to watch my videos with your kiddos, I'm not planning on cursing in this, but I just want you to know that it's not necessarily kid-friendly content. So there's your warning. Let's get into it. My husband and I had gone through 3 IUIs, and none of them worked. I had done letrozole and Clomid, and none of those were working. That was after a 1.5 years, I believe, of trying on our own. And then another 6 months of doing, like I said, some kind of fertility treatment, whether it be letrozole, Clomid, or IUIs, and nothing. Like I've never had a miscarriage. That's not something I've ever experienced. I've never experienced like a chemical pregnancy or anything like that. So it was like BFN, as they say in the fertility world, which is big fat negative, every single month, every single time. So that was, of course I can talk about this, by the way. I'm not trying to be insensitive. I can talk about this with a little bit of lightheartedness now because I'm so far removed from it. But that does not mean that I am making light of your situation and what you're going through. So please understand that I, at the time, all of this was incredibly difficult for me and incredibly emotional. So I am not being, I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm just, I'm in a different place with it now, so I don't feel the same way about it. So we met with our doctor, our fertility doctor, and she basically said like, listen, I don't really know what the heck is going on with you guys. This doesn't make any sense. You guys have had children together before. Sometimes fertility issues are just like, the genetic material just doesn't like mesh well. You know, there's lots of little things that can be issues, but she just couldn't pinpoint anything that made any sense. And so basically we were told, you know, we can keep at this, you guys can keep doing this, and, you know, trying these other things, or, you know, or we can just go ahead and do a round of IVF. We'll just do 1, we'll be really conservative with it, and you guys will, you know, you're gonna get pregnant. I mean, it wasn't, let me say, she wasn't like guaranteeing anything, but it was definitely, the conversation was kind of like, if you go ahead and go to this like extreme measure, it's surely gonna work. And I think a lot of people, at least at the time for me, I didn't know a lot of people who'd done IVF and it didn't work. To me, that was like the last resort. That was the thing that people go to when everything else has failed. And that's how you have a baby. That's how people have a baby when they're 55, you know? So in my mind, it was like, this is obviously going to work. Like, it's just a matter of getting over the like financial hurdle of it and everything. So we had decided to go ahead and do that. We had decided to, every clinic is different, so I don't even want to really get into pricing, but our clinic offered something where it was like, you could do 3 rounds of IVF for this much, or for this much, you could just do 1. And because we were sure that it was going to work, of course, we were like, oh, we're just going to do 1. That's stupid. Why would we pay for that? We're not going to need to do it 3 times. And so we were like, we'll just pay for the 1. It was thousands cheaper. So we just figured that made the most sense. Now, again, I'm a little too far removed to be able to tell you exact medications and dosages. I do know that, again, we were very conservative with medication. We weren't using this to start our family. We were using it to finish our family. So it was really important to us that we not have 15 embryos to try to decide what to do with. So we really wanted a small number. I started the injections, and I don't remember exactly. I think in the beginning it's like 1 or 2 shots a day, and then the closer you get, you add a little more in, and there was also oral medication. But basically these are medications to get you to produce more follicles, and inside of those follicles are eggs. Then they go in and do an egg retrieval and take a little device and like poke it through each of those follicles and take out the egg that's inside of it. On the day I went in for my egg retrieval, I think they said I had like 10 to 12 follicles, which was more than we were expecting anyways. Like I said, we were very conservative with medication, so that was actually more than we were expecting anyways. And you do go under like sort of a light sedation for that procedure. And then when they woke me up, they said, okay, there was, I think she said 10 eggs inside and 9 were mature. So they took those 9 mature eggs, and then earlier that morning, CR had left his sample for them. So they take the man sample and put it on like a little tiny sperm carousel where it like goes, and I don't know if they're trying to like dizzy them all up to figure out which ones can go straight now and those are the good ones. I don't really know how they do that, but they kind of like take the sperm, make them all dizzy, and then pick the good ones. They put those together with the eggs, and hopefully you end up with some embryos. So they told us the next day that they would call us and let us know like what our report was. Our clinic, I think if I remember correctly, they followed up with you every day or every other day. And so we had actually gone camping, because that seems like a good idea after you've just had an egg retrieval and you're all swollen and but whatever. So we went camping, and they called us the next day and said that 8 had fertilized. And I was like, oh no, because of course, again, in my mind, I was not like, oh no, I was happy, but I was also like, okay, we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do with the rest of these. Because I thought surely like we're gonna end up with, 5 or 6 good embryos. And then I think they don't call you the next day, it's the day after that. So the day after that, they called again. I think it was like every other day. Maybe it was like a day 3 report, and said that I want to say that we were down to like 4 or 5 that had continued growing. And I was like, oh, okay. I was a little surprised, but still, everything looked good. And so then we came home from camping, and I was supposed to take my son to preschool, and I had to stop at the grocery store and get cupcakes because it was his birthday. So I stopped at the grocery store to get cupcakes, and it was day 5. And so they call you and tell you how many embryos you have to freeze, because the plan was we were not going to do a fresh transfer. We were going to freeze all and then do a transfer the next month or the month after my body had a chance to like regulate from all of the medications that you're on to get to this point, I was in the produce section looking for, like the deli section, looking for cupcakes, and my phone rang, and it was the clinic, and I answered it, and they were like, very matter of fact, but basically said like, your embryos are not doing well. You're down to 1, maybe 2. Neither one of them have made it to the blastocyst phase or stage, Like usually you have like a day 5 blast is what they call it, and they rate it and all this stuff. Mine weren't even able to be rated. They were still morulas, if I remember correctly. Like they just weren't growing as they should. Everything else had petered off, and these 2 were the only 2 left, and it was like one was and one was eh. And so they basically said, like, come in, we're going to go ahead and transfer them both and see if inside your body they will be able to grow and do what they need to do. So I hung up, and I mean, I was devastated. I was devastated because, again, you go in thinking this is not only going to work, but it might work too well, and we might have too many embryos, and then we're going to have to decide what to do with them. And, you know, we had already known like what we would do, but still it was, you know, like you just go in thinking it's going to be in abundance, and instead you get told that like you have basically nothing. And so I cried pretty much the entire way there. They do not put you to sleep for the embryo transfer because it's very quick. I just remember my doctor like grabbing my hand and saying, like, you have got to stop crying. I am not going to do this transfer with you crying like this. You need to be positive. You need to think positive. And I wanted to, but it was like my brain knew. I just knew what the outcome was going to be. And so I tried to kind of pull myself together to do the transfer. And then she came in to see me in the recovery, and I was still in there like, not like full blown ugly crying, but definitely like kind of weepy. And, you know, she basically said, go home, go on bed rest. Don't get out of bed for a few days. Just rest, relax, drink lots of water, you know, all that kind of stuff that they tell you to do. And, you know, we'll see what happens, you know. And so I went home and prayed like I'd never prayed before. I kept the little picture of the 2 little embryos next to my, they weren't even technically embryos, by the way, next to my side table, and I just prayed for them constantly. I you know, put my hands on my belly and prayed just constantly that they would stick, one or both of them. I think it was probably four days after transfer that I took my first pregnancy test. I was trying to, I had been like doing pregnancy tests all along because they give you an HCG shot before your egg retrieval, and HCG is the pregnancy hormone, and so it kind of helps your body to release those eggs when they go in to do the egg retrieval. But it also sort of puts the pregnancy hormone in your body, so you can get a false positive pregnancy test because you still have that hormone in there. So I was taking pregnancy tests every day to test out the trigger shot, is what they kind of call that process. So you watch the line get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter until it's gone, and then if it starts getting darker and darker and darker again, then you know you're actually pregnant. And mine was just getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter, lighter. It never started getting darker again. And I think it was probably like 6 or 7 days past transfer when I knew like this just didn't work. Like, I knew for sure at that point, like, and I know some people get positives later and everything, but like my heart just knew that it didn't work. I didn't need to go in for a beta. I can't even remember if I did or not. I actually think I didn't. I think I was just like, no, I don't want to pay for another thing. I know I'm not pregnant. Pregnancy tests say I'm not pregnant. And then I got my period. So it was like, I'm not going in for a beta. That's dumb. So it was a colossal failure. There were no, sometimes you'll hear people do a transfer, but they still have 1 or 2 frozen or something. Like I had nothing. I had nothing frozen. Nothing worked. We were just done at that point. Like, it sounds really kind of cold, but like out all the money that we'd spent. I'd been on all these medications that made me kind of like hormonal and crazy. And it was like, it felt like at that time, like this was all for nothing. Like it was just all for nothing. Then I began to do some research, and that's where I discovered using donor embryos or embryo adoption. And so I have a whole nother video about that. I'm not really going to go into like the details of all of that, except to say that we did we decided to do embryo transfer or embryo adoption, donor embryos, and that process happened very, very quickly, much quicker than I probably like anticipated. And so they started me on the medications. I took estrogen. We went with my natural cycle, and I really wanted it to be like as natural as possible because I felt like part of it with the IVF was just that like my body was so out of whack. I don't even know that it could have conceived a pregnancy if it wanted to. Like, I feel like all the medications they put you on and stuff can sometimes just make your body feel like it doesn't know what's going on. So I knew I wanted a really natural cycle. So they put me on estrogen, which is basically just meant to like plump up your uterine lining and make it, for lack of a better term, juicy and moist. I know that's so disgusting. I think I said that in my embryo, the video I made about this, and there was a few comments from people that were like, please don't ever refer to your uterine lining as juicy or moist ever again. So I just did it now. You're welcome. You take that, and then I think it's like 5 or 6 days before your embryo transfer, they start you on progesterone. Your body usually starts, I believe, producing that around that time naturally, like around ovulation. So anyways, and those, depending on what doctor you go to, sometimes they'll do progesterone and oil, and so those will be injections in your butt, and other times they'll be suppositories that go up your vagina. So they started me on all that medication, and I think this time we did things a little bit differently. I felt like I was far less stressed about the outcome, or I really just got to a mental place where I accepted that this was either going to work or it wasn't. And I think that helped a lot with my mental place with doing this transfer. So I remember I had watched a ton of videos on YouTube about like how to prepare for IVF and stuff like that. And there was a lot of, you know, advice, like specific advice, and I will actually link some of those videos down below in the description box that were some of my favorites that had like, because of course those people made those videos in the process, so they had like their little baskets of like prune juice and pineapple core and drinking lots of water and stool softeners and all that kind of stuff. Obviously I'm pretty far removed from mine, so I don't really have like a little basket of goodies, but I do have a couple of like post-transfer things I want to talk about, so we'll get there in a second. But I will leave those videos linked down below if you are going to go through a transfer soon and you're looking for some very logistical advice about like how to get through it. But here's what I will say. This time when we did the embryo transfer for the twins, obviously we put in 2, and they were 5-day blasts, and they were, you know, good looking embryos. Know what that means, but they looked good according to the doctor. This time, however, the doctor recommended that I not do strict bed rest after. She actually recommended that they did the transfer. I laid down for 10 or 15 minutes after, and then I got up and got dressed, and I didn't run or like go work out or anything. Okay, so I had to switch cameras because that one, both batteries died, and I just didn't have time to wait for them to charge to finish filming this. So sorry, that's probably weird that we went from one filming setup look to a completely different one, but it's okay. This time though, instead of like doing the whole complete bed rest thing for days after, my doctor was like, walk around, get some blood flow, and it's better, she felt like, not only for my for me physically, but for me mentally as well, which I really think there's something to that. I think that sometimes just laying around in bed and thinking too much can make you start to think about every single little twinge, everything you feel. You start to think like, oh, is this implantation? Is this like, it can be a little much. And you know, your body needs good blood flow for implantation. And so moving around, again, not running marathons, but just not being sedentary, I think that there's some benefit there. I really do. So like I said, I did things very differently. I just tried to be a lot more calm about it and not overthink it too much. And like I said, I didn't overdo it, but I also just didn't lay around all day like I had before. So there's lots of different schools of thought on that, but I know that for me, I definitely feel like that was beneficial and it helped. Like I said, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Just not being like alone with my thoughts all the time, because I just needed to get out of my own head. So after that embryo transfer, I stayed relatively active to my normal schedule and normal routine. And the other thing I want to say about that too is, like, if you think about natural conception, you might, when you're trying to conceive, you might do the whole like legs up on the headboard thing for a little while after. But when it comes to the actual time of implantation, that's happening days or a week after intercourse has taken place. And my guess is you're probably not like, I need to take the week off work because I'm trying to get pregnant, so I need to stay in bed. So if you think about it like logically, it makes sense that you would just continue with your normal activity level afterwards. That's just my thought. I could be totally wrong, but just my thought. So I think I did not do a trigger shot this time. So I knew that there was no HCG in my system. So I knew if I saw anything positive on the pregnancy test that it was legitimate. So I mean, I'm sure I waited like a whole 3 days before I started taking pregnancy tests because I was a lunatic like that. It sounds completely nutty when I think about it now, but at the time I was like, why not? So literally, I think 3 days, the night of 3 days past transfer, I took a pregnancy test. Of course it was negative. And then 4 days past transfer, which would be like 9 DPO, which is when often, sometimes women will get positive, like start to see really faint positives. That morning I had taken 2 different pregnancy tests, actually 3. And I'm going to insert some pictures in here because I've never shared these before. And I had planned on doing a video showing you guys different pregnancy tests and what I thought like worked the best and everything. And then I never did that. So I'm going to insert some pictures in here because I took the strip test, like from Amazon, the little HCG strip test. I took the first response, which I actually still have some of. These are the first response pregnancy tests, the 6 days sooner ones. I highly, highly recommend only pink dye tests. Blue dye tests are liars. Not really, but they're very, very often false positives, false negatives. I mean, I just feel like those blue dye tests are crap. I don't even know why they're on the market still. But these first response with the pink dye are really, really, really good tests and quite sensitive, but not as sensitive as this other test, which I don't have any more of, but I'm going to insert a picture to show you. These are called, I don't know how I pronounce it OSOM. There might be a different way, but I pronounce it OSOM because it's just OSOM. So they are these little card. It looks like a little like plasticky card thing. And also I've heard lots of great things about the Dollar Tree tests from the dollar store, but I didn't use those with this cycle. I'd used them in previous times trying, but not with this one. So I can't really speak too much to those. I just stuck to these 3, the strip test, this one, and the OSOM test. So the morning of 4 days past transfer, I took those 3 different tests. It felt like I saw, like initially I saw nothing on this, nothing on the strip test. And the OSOM test, here's the thing about it. It's a black dye. Okay, it's not pink, it's not blue, it's a black dye. And it takes about 20 minutes to develop. So these are like immediate gratification, right? You get to see in like 3 minutes. The OSOM test, you gotta be patient for. But here's the thing, if you're patient, they show pregnancy, in my opinion, way sooner than any other test. Because that one showed a positive that was easy to see. I didn't need to, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, like, you know, like a 2 solid black lines, but the second line, the test line was easy to see with the naked eye. You know, sometimes if you've ever been like addicted to peeing on sticks, you're like twisting it and turning it and you're over by a window and you're like, I think I see some, and you become a lunatic. With this, the OSOM test, I didn't have to do that. Like I could just hold it up and there was a faint second line. And I was like, what the, This was the first time I'd ever used those tests though. So I didn't know if I could trust it or not. I'm like, well, this one says no. And at the time, the stripped one, you know, 5 or I don't know, maybe 20 minutes after I took these tests, this one was negative. The strip one looked like it was probably negative too. And then the OSOM test was showing a faint second line. So I was like, I didn't know what to believe, but I started to get excited. And then I felt like I started noticing that maybe there was a faint second line developing on the OSOM or on the strip test. Well, so then I had to go run some errands, and I talked about this on Instagram, which I think is what sparked my brain to like talk about this in a video, was that I had talked about it on Instagram and I thought, you know, I've never told them this story. So let me share my whole like IVF story stuff. But I actually found out that I was pregnant with the twins in the Starbucks bathroom because I went to CVS to get some more of these because I was out, because I'd peed on so many that I was out at the time. So I went to CVS to buy more of these. I had to be somewhere for something like an hour later. So I didn't have time to go home is what I'm trying to say. So right next to the CVS, there was a Starbucks. So I went into the Starbucks, went into the bathroom, peed on the pregnancy test, put the cap on, wrapped it in paper towels, put it in my purse, and went back out to my car. Or actually, I went to the line, got myself a drink and a snack, and then went out to my car. And I got in the car and I like opened it, you know, when I knew it had had a few minutes to develop, and there was definitely a second line. It was faint, but there was definitely one there. And so I always joke, like, I found out I was pregnant in the Starbucks, at the Starbucks bathroom. The next morning, and I think when I got home, I'm sure I took a couple more pregnancy tests. But the next morning, so that would have been 5 days past a 5-day transfer, or like 10 DPO as they call it. I took another test, and that one, the first response test, was obviously positive. I had also gotten a digital test, and the digital test came up pregnant. And then you could definitely see it on the little strip test as well. So, and the OSUM test was even darker the next day. So I ended up taking all 3 of those tests every day for like, I don't know, a week and a half maybe. And had them all, like I said, I was gonna do like a progression, like a line progression video, and show you guys like all of the tests. And I just ended up getting sick really early on in that pregnancy because I was pregnant with twins. So I do have a couple pictures that you've probably seen. Hopefully I've inserted those in this video so that you can see what I'm talking about with the different tests. But I will say that, like, if you are TTC currently, whether you're doing IVF or not, or just trying the old fashioned way, I would definitely recommend those OSUM tests. I will leave them linked down below. I'll leave all that linked down below so you guys can easily find them. I was just really, really surprised by how much, like, I just felt like how much clearer the positive was earlier than with any of the other tests. So, and I feel like I gave some to my sister, and she felt the same way because she used them when she got pregnant with Ruby. And I feel like she felt the same way, that those tests showed sooner than any other test. Craziness, but they're good tests. You just have to be patient because, like I said, it takes like 20 minutes to fully develop. So yeah, I feel like for me, relaxing a little bit helped a lot with that. And also not being so sedentary, not being so laid up and on bed rest and stuff like that helped a lot when I did my embryo transfer with the twins. Otherwise, I guess I just feel like there's all kinds of advice and tips and things out there for different, you know, things that you can take, medications, not even medications, but just like vitamins and foods you can eat, and you know, things like that, different you know, pineapple core and stuff like that. And maybe that helps and maybe it doesn't. I feel like I did all of that stuff when I was doing my IUIs, and I did all that stuff when we did our first round of IVF, and it still all fell completely flat. And then I kind of just said, like, what will be, and I'm gonna do my best to be healthy and active and all that stuff, but I'm, you know, I kind of just like threw my hands up with this last transfer, and it worked. So again, I know that sometimes, especially when you're going through that stuff, just having something tangible you can do, it's not that you feel like you can control it, but you feel like you can control something. So I totally get the desire to want to do all of that stuff. But at least for my experience, it didn't end up being necessary. When the time came when it was, you know, when it actually worked for me, it worked in lieu of all that stuff. But like I said, I watched so many videos and took on so much advice from other people. So I will leave those linked down below in the description box for different people who've made IVF videos and stuff like that that I've watched over the years, with different tips and things like that, because I do think and totally understand that that can be helpful. Yeah, so that's kind of my like IVF experience and journey with embryo transfers. I've obviously done it twice now, so hopefully maybe there was some little piece of advice, or maybe you just found it interesting. Maybe you're just curious. That's okay too. I watch things I'm just curious about all the time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you did, and leave me any questions you have in the comments down below. I will do my best to answer those. I've got a whole long list of other videos I want to make, more some things like this where I just want to talk to you guys and share with you some different stuff. But of course, suggestions are always welcome if there's things you want to see. I know some people are just here for the vlogs, and that's fine, but I love connecting with you guys like this on really personal topics that we can kind of talk about, and especially talk about down in the comments. So that's it for today's video, guys, and I will see you guys again very soon. Bye.
When you came over, my heart was on its way out.